Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf, Meseches CHULLIN Daf Lamed. We begin 6 lines from the top of the Amid Masiv. Rav Idi Bar Abin, I have a question, says Rav Idi Bar Abin. This relates to the two opinions discussed yesterday. At what point is the shechita considered shechita? As soon as you start cutting, so it's a continuous process which develops and concludes at the end, and the whole thing is considered an act of shechita, or shall we say shechita only kicks in at the end. So the cutting process is really not considered an actual shechita until it's completed. That's when it's regarded as an act of shechita. We had a machlokes between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, and this kasha relates to the shita of Rish Lakish, who told us that shechita only comes at the end of the process. Here's a kasha from a Mishnah, Meseches Pesach. Mishnah talks about the halacha where one is not allowed to bring a korban on the Yom Tov of Pesach if there's chametz, if he owns chametz. So whether it's a korban Pesach that he's bringing, or even any other korban, provided that it's a valid korban, like a shlamim, and so on and so forth. Now this Mishnah speaks specifically about a fellow who had an extra korban Pesach. It wasn't really needed for whatever reason. So it wasn't offered on Erev Pesach. Now it's Pesach itself. It's on Chol HaMoed. Uba Moed. And we all know that a korban Pesach, which is unneeded for its own sake, is now transferred. It is converted into a korban shalomim. So by default, an unneeded korban Pesach is considered like a shlamim. So it's on Chol HaMoed, and he has this unneeded korban Pesach, and there's chametz in the area. Lishmai, if he processes this, if he shechts the korban Pesach for the sake of korban Pesach, which of course doesn't work because it's too late for that, potter. It's not a valid korban, so he's potter despite having chametz because it's not a kosher korban. Shaloi lishmai chayev. But if he relabels it, Rashi says, he says, I'm doing the shechita for the sake of making it a shlamim. That's a valid process. It becomes a shlamim, and therefore, since he has chametz, he's chayev. He has violated the Isser because he processed a proper korban with chametz. So says the Mishnah. And the question was posed, time with the shloi lishmai. The Mishnah infers that it's only when he relabels it to a shlamim does it have the status of a shlamim, etc., etc. Hastama. Suppose it wasn't specified. He didn't consciously relabel it. He just did the shechita without having anything in mind. Potter. It is presumed to be a korban Pesach. It retains that old label, and since the Pesach brought in this manner is possible, of course, so he's potter, despite the fact that he had chametz. And the question is why? Why is he potter? An unneeded korban Pesach automatically defaults into a shlamim, which makes it a valid korban, which makes him liable to the chametz. V'amai potter? Why is he potter? Pesach bishar yimois hashana. A Pesach throughout the year, shlamahu, automatically is regarded like a shlamim. Oh, Shmamino, do you mean to say Pesach bishar yimois hashana bayakir? Shall we say that the Mishnah is implying that it's not an automatic default? You have to do akira, you have to uproot, you have to relabel it to make it a shlamim. Otherwise, it's going to maintain its Pesach status. Is that true? And really, it's a whole big machlokes, and it's not so simple. Do you mean to say that? No, says the Gemara, not necessarily so. Perhaps, in a typical case, it would automatically revert by default to a shlamim. But here it's different, because the Pesach was still needed for Pesach. What do you mean? It's already Chol HaMoed, too late? No, the owner was Tamei, and he's awaiting Pesach Sheni. So in this case, and in this case only, the animal retains, the korban retains its former label, its former status, unless you consciously relabel it. Bar Gamdo, he says, look, this was the consensus in the Beis HaMedrash, Nizrika, this response was transmitted by Pichabura from everybody, from the whole group. Basically, it was a consensus. Everybody agreed. But Amr, they answered like this: my skin. We're speaking here about a special case. The owner was unfit to bring a korban pesach. It was tamei, touched the mace. In which case he's deferred to Pesach Sheni. The animal, the korban, is still presumed to be awaiting that experience. It's still a korban pesach unless you consciously, actively change that. Now, so this needs an akira. This needs to be changed for it to be changed. But in a regular case, where the owner is no longer waiting for the korban pesach, he already bought his korban pesach, in which case the animal is no longer anticipating a korban pesach experience, it's just leftovers, unneeded. In that case, you don't have to actually relabel it to give it a shlamim status. It's automatic. It defaults into a shlam. Now here comes the kasha, which pertains to our sugya. So what are we saying? An unneeded korban pesach automatically defaults to a shlamim, in which case if you start shechting it, it's considered a shechita of a shlamim, which is valid. And if there's chametz in the area, he has violated the Yisr. But so let's go back to this case of the Pesach, which is still going to be needed and going to be used at the next opportunity on the Pesach Sheni. Mishnah says that since it's meant for a Pesach, unless you actively switch it to a shlam, it's considered a Pesach. In which case, the shechita being done to it is invalid. Disqualifies it, because you can't do a korban Pesach and malav chalamayit. The wrong time, the wrong place. And since it's invalid, he's not responsible for the chametz that he has. Yeah, but that only works according to one approach, according to one understanding of the act of shechita. Certainly, if you say yeshna l'shechita b'tchil v'atzoy, the shechita process begins when you start and continues all the way through till the end. As soon as you start cutting, it's already considered the act of shechita. If salei mitchila shechita, so this non-korban pesach is unfit korban pesach. Becomes possible as soon as you start shechting it. Because, as we explained, it's the wrong place and time. He's awaiting Pesach Sheni. He's a true korban Pesach, awaiting Pesach Sheni. You have no business doing it now. He's not a shlamim. So you start cutting it with the assumption that it's a Pesach, because he hasn't really changed that. He hasn't really relabeled it, right? It's just stama. He started shechting for the sake of Pesach. If salei, mitchila shechita. As soon as he starts the shechita, it becomes pasul. So we understand the halacha in the Mishnah. Mishnah says, if you take the leftover korban Pesach, you have a mind consciously for a shlamim, okay, it turns into a shlamim, and it's a valid korban. If there's chametz, you're chayiv. But otherwise, stama, and we're talking that the owner is still awaiting Pesach Sheni, so the animal is still considered a potential Pesach Sheni, so now when you shecht it on Chalamayid, wrong place and time, it's possible and there's no liability for the chametz. Again, that's because when you start cutting it, it's an act of shechita which invalidates the korban. But if you go the other approach, shechita only happens at the very end of the cut. Until that happens, it's not really shechita. It's just slicing. It's a mundane act. So ironically, this should actually hold him liable. Why? Given the shachat beipurta, once he starts doing the first little bit of shechita, itchil mi Pesach. So now it's no longer fit. He's not going to survive until Pesach Sheni. So now he's rejected from the Pesach track. And now he reverts to the regular track of a shlamim, because an unfit Pesach, by default, reverts into shlamim. Idach shachat, when he continues and finishes the cut, the act of shechita till the very end, shlamim kashachat. It is regarded like an act of shechita on a shlamim, which is the natural position, so to speak, natural status of an unneeded Korban Pesach. It reverts to a shlamim, it defaults to a shlamim. Which is what happens in this case. The only reason why it didn't is because it's awaiting Pesach Sheni. Guess what? It's no longer awaiting Pesach Sheni once you start cutting it. It's not going to survive. So ironically, this sort of disqualifying factor, the fact that he cut it L'Shem Pesach, disqualifies it from Pesach, and now defaults to Shlamim, which is a valid Korban, and with Chametz, he has violated the Yisra of having Chametz during the Akrava of the Shlamim. No. He did Chilei Pesach. It's true that once you start cutting it, it's no longer going to be, it's not potentially a Pesach anymore. But may Pesach mi itchi, in terms of its value, it can still be converted into a Korban Pesach. You can redeem it on the spot and direct the money for purchase of the second chance Korban Pesach of Pesach Sheni. So in a certain respect, it's still regarded, it still maintains its Pesach status. So it doesn't really default into a shlamim. And a Pesach brought on Chalamoid is puzzle, so he's exempt from having chametz. Exempt from the liability, despite having chametz with the hakrava. Perhaps you'll argue, no, you can't redeem it at this stage. I mean, once you start cutting, it's not going to... Boy hamad v'aracha, you have to... before you redeem, you have to have it stand up and you have to assess it, which is not really applicable once you start shechting it. V'atanan, well, that's not true. We have a Mishnah, shochet bo shnaim urev shnaim, even if you cut through both simonim or most of them, v'ataynim farcheses, and the animal's still floundering, still showing signs of life, technically you can still quickly do hamad v'aracha, harihi k'chai l'chol dvarei, it's regarded like alive. With all respects, meaning you can still quickly redeem it. And as such, it still retains its Pesach status. And since it's a Pesach brought on Chalamayit, it's possible, in which case there's no chiyuv for having chametz. Interesting discussion. So we had this machlekes between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Rish Lakish says shechita is a continuous, is only going to kick in at the end of the act of shechita. Rabbi Yochanan says it's a continuous act. We had some kashas which were resolved. Here comes a brand new sugi pertaining to shechita, of course. Amar Rabbi Dam Rav. So Rida quotes Rav. Ashaychet b'shnaim or shleisha makaymis. So he cut the simon, the simonim, in a couple of different places. So according to some, it means that he did a full cut over here, and then he went and cut other places too. According to others, we're talking that he actually cut a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. So cumulatively, you'll get the proper amount of cutting, but it's in different locations. You have to sort of combine the mitzarif, the various cuts, to get to the majority, to get to the shechita. Okay, in any case, whatever it is, it wasn't a straight, clean cut which allows for a proper, opening and exposure of the Beis HaShechita. It's sort of cut in all different places, which creates this sort of, bundling and gathering of the pipes. It's not a clean, open cut. Okay, so what is the halacha? Again, I'm going to read the Marav. He cut in a couple of different places. It works, it's fine. Rav Rida continues and he says, look, when I came to Shmuel, who was my next Rebbe, so after relating Rav's opinion, he responded, Amarli says, no, actually, it doesn't work. But we require an open, clean cut. Shchita mufuras. Mufuras means exposed, open, has to be clear, open, clean cut. Shchita mufuras v'leki, you don't have it in this case. V'af Reb Shimon Lakish Savar, he also holds that it doesn't work. But on shchita mufuras, we need to have a clean, open cut. The Amar of Shimon Lakish. How do we know? How do we know the shchita shima mufuras? It has to be a clean, exposed cut. Shenamar. The pasuk in Tehillim. Sorry, in Yirmiyah. Cheitz shachat l'shayna mirma diber. So the arrow which shoots through is compared to a shchita, cheitz shachut. And just like an arrow, Rashi explains, the straight, clean cut in one location. Likewise, shchita has to be a single, nice cut in one location. Master Belazar, I have a question, says Belazar, from the Mishnah coming up later, which says, Beis oichzen besaken v'shaychten. Two shaychtim can be holding the knife, and we're thinking at this point, they're each holding their own knife, so it's two knives in total. V'shaychten, they can do shchita. Shnayim oichzen besaken v'shaychten, afilu echad milamala v'echad milamata. So Reuven is cutting further up, closer to the throat, to the head. The other one's cutting further down, closer to the stomach. It works. That's a kshera. The question is, why am I? It's not a clean, single cut. He says, no. The Mishnah is speaking about a single knife. Our Mishnah is speaking, the single knife is handling the shchita. Two shaychtim involved at the same time. So they're both clutching the knife. And it's sort of an angle. He's cutting on the top, the other fellow is grabbing the knife on the bottom. It's sort of an angle, and they're both cutting it like that. It's okay. Because again, it's a regular shchita, despite the fact that there are two shaychtim involved. Amalei Rabbi Abbas, Rabbi Abba responds, if that's the case that the Mishnah is depicting, how do you explain the following? So we have the Brisa, which explains and elaborates and says, look, you have to be careful. We're not concerned, perhaps they're going to make it a treifa on each other. So that's the chiddush of the Mishnah. Don't be concerned about them causing the treifa to happen because of their combined efforts. Now hold it. If it's the same knife, why would you even be concerned about treifa? How could that come about? Yeah, if it's two people handling two separate knives, I can understand why treifa is an issue. Why? Perhaps I should be concerned. Leichush. Perhaps I would say leichush. Let's be concerned. Perhaps they're just relying on each other. He's going to cut properly, and the other fellow thinks the same about him. Reuben is not going to cut through most; he's just going to cut a little bit, which makes it a treifa. Reuben, likewise, Shimon won't cut mostly because he'll think that Reuben is relying on Reuben. Kama Shimon, the point of the mission is that we're not concerned that they're not going to do a proper shchita. So that works if there are two people with two knives. We have to preempt this concern. If we're talking about two people handling the same knife and just doing one cut together, how in the world does that trigger a treifa issue? So when we say ein chayshishin shema yitrafu ze al ze, we're not concerned that they're going to make it a treifa because of this joint effort. That shouldn't be the concern. The concern should be more that they might press too hard. If the two people are grabbing the same knife, they're going to squeeze down too hard. Shema yidraisu ze al ze. The concern should be, you should talk about a concern that they're going to make the psul of drasa, they're going to press down too hard. That should be the concern. Rabban responds, you're right. Tani revise the Mishnah in Cheshishin. The concern is, or we're not concerned, we turn to Talmud base, that they'll cause too much pressure and press down. So in fact that's the case and that's the concern. Most of Rabbi Abin has a question from another Brisa. And again, this is on the shita of Shmuel and Rish Lakish, who require a shchita mefuras, a clean, open, single cut. Brisa says like this: Shachat asak veshet lamata, vesakana lamala. So we have the veshet, the food pipe, and the kana, the windpipe. And he cut them separately, not in the same location. The veshet he cut further down on the body, and the kana further up, or the opposite. Oh yes, veshet lamala, the veshet was cut on top, and the kana was cut further down towards the stomach. It works. The question is why? It's not a singular cut. It's a combined cut. You don't have shchita mufras. This is cut here, this is cut here. So, sure, you accumulated a full shchita, but it's in different locations. The answer is like this. Who moisev lo? Rabbi Abin, who presented the question, he also resolved it. We're talking that it's the same cut. It's like a quill. You ever see like the fountain pen, or like the quill of the sefer, right? In the front, you see like a cut at an angle, like a circular shape. And that's exactly what happened here. So we have the veshet and the kana, and he cut through on an angle. It's the same cut, just instead of cutting straight down, he cut it sort of circular, but ultimately it's a single, continuous cut in the same locations. That qualifies. Okay, here comes a story. There was this ox, it was shechted, but in different locations, a little here, a little there. So together we have a proper shechita, but it wasn't a clean, straight, open cut. All Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta, so this Amoira came in. So what happened? Shakal, and he took the meat for personal consumption. Mishuf for the best meat. So he certified the shechita. Amalei Rabbi Zera says, okay, we can infer from your conduct that a dispersed shechita is okay. And in fact, when the Mishnah speaks about the two people doing the shechita, it's as we had suggested earlier, that two knives involved, the two separate places being cut, that's okay, as long as it combines to a shechita. Rabbeinu, you just taught us that the correct understanding of the Mishnah was as we had initially thought. Mishnah saying, two people with two knives cutting in different places. So even though it's a combined shechita, it works. Okay, so bottom line is we have a machlekes, whether or not it needs to be a shechita mefuras, an open, clean, smooth cut. Some say yes, some say no. Now we shift to the next disqualifying element called chalada. Chalada means you concealed the knife. You embedded it into the animal while you did the shechita. Hechled is hasaken being similar paskei. So you slipped his knife between the two pipes. Okay, so you have the two pipes, you slid the knife in, and then you cut down. Psula. It's possible. That's called chalada. Rashi explains, again, you have the two simanim, you slid the knife in between, you cut the bottom one, then you pulled out the knife and cut the top one. So ultimately you cut both. But you had concealed the knife in the process. Psula. Tachas ha'oyer kshera. If it's only embedded under the skin is not really a shechita element, it's not a shechita material, so that's okay. That's not called chalada. My kamash, what's the point of Rab's halacha? We already know from a Mishnah that chalada is a disqualifying factor. Tanina, we have a Mishnah. Shechlid is asaken. Tachas hasheni upaskei. So Mishnah speaking where he, right, we have two simanim, he cut the top one, pulled out the knife, slid it underneath the second one, and cut upwards. So it's another form of concealment. That's not a proper shechita. In fact, you have a machlekes whether it's considered like a nevela and it's metame, or is it just a treifa, which we'll discuss later on. Rabbi Sheva Vaimer, it's nevela, it's like a dead animal. It wasn't a proper shechita because he concealed the knife in the process. Rukiva, it's only a treifa. So we already know this halacha from that Mishnah. Why is Rav repeating it? There's a difference, a slight difference. Even Masnissen, if only from that Mishnah, I would say the problem there is because he shechted the wrong direction. Hanamili milmata lamala, because remember, he concealed the knife underneath the bottom siman and came up. From bottom up. Milmata lamala, since he didn't do it in the right direction, that's why it's possible. But in our case of Rav, where he went from top down, right? He slid his knife between the simanim, came down, and then came back up and cut the top one from top down. The shechita is doing it in the right direction. Perhaps it's okay. No, the point is, it's chalada because of the concealment. Okay, tachas ha'or kshera. So we quote Rav as telling us that if you conceal the knife into the skin, it's okay. Now we have a different version of Rav. Rav Amri, in the yeshiva of Rav, they quoted, they said tachas ha'or in yadei. I'm not sure. In this case, where it was slid underneath the skin, it's concealed, but not really concealed with shechita material. So that's why we're unsure. And the question was posed, Libei Rav. According to this version of Rav, the Amr who say, Tachas or in Yadei, I'm not sure if it was concealed under the skin, what to do. So according to that, let's stretch it a bit further. What happens Tachas Matlas Mahu? Let's say the neck of the animal was wrapped in a piece of material, and he hid the knife concealed under the material. It's not even part of the animal, but it's concealed. Now, what's the status? Tachas Tzarim Mesubach Ma. What if it was concealed in the clump of hair of the animal? So it's not really the body, it's the hair. No. Is that considered chalada or not? Mao. Take it, we leave it unresolved. And Rashi says we always have to go to chumrah when we have a teku by an Issur related issue. Boira Pub becomes a new question. Hichle b'miut simanin mao teku. So he already did most of the cut, and he's holding b'miut at the very end, the last section of this siman, and then he concealed his knife and finished cutting it. Ma, what's the status here? Really, he didn't need that. It was unnecessary. He could have just pulled his knife out and gone home, but he decided to continue and complete the process, which makes that last cut as part of the shechita. So since it was done improperly, what's the status of the animal? Take it, we leave it unresolved. And Rashi says, when we have take it, we go to chumrah. So he says, even if there was a disqualifying element on the last part of the shechita, which technically he could have done without, but since he chose to complete the full cut, he has to do it properly. Otherwise, it's possible. Continues the Mishnah. Hashoichet beis Russian ke'echad tasik sheira. He decides to save some time, and he lines up one animal next to the other, and he does one shechita on both heads. It's okay. Oh, this sounds familiar. Shnaim oichsen besaken v'shoichtem. So if you have two people clutching the knife, doing shechita together, I feel even one is on top, one is on bottom, as we explained before. Tasik sheira works. Hitis es aroish bas achas. If he snaps the head off in one go, like just snapping down, pressing down, pasula, that's called the rasa. That's possible. It has to be with a swinging motion, back and forth motion. Oh, let's say he was swinging across, cutting. And he severed the head with one swoop. So instead of going sort of fro and back, right, to and back, he did one swing in one direction. Is that a proper shechita or not? It depends how long the knife is. If it's a long enough knife, it allows for a proper cut without pressure, even though it's just a one-directional cut. Im yesh besaken meloit savar. If the knife is long enough to encompass the neck, and the Gemara later will tell us, what it means is like this. It has to be longer than the neck. If the neck is, let's say, is 4 inches wide, the saken has to have 4 plus 4. It has to be a total of 8 inches, in which case it can accommodate a proper cut, even though it's just one direction. Then it's shira. Suppose he did shechita on two animals side by side in one go again. So in this case, the knife again has to be longer to accommodate it. If the knife is long enough to accommodate both necks plus 4 inches, aside from that, then it's okay. When do we have to have all these lengths and all these requirements? If you cut just going without coming back, or you cut coming towards him without cutting outwardly, so it was just a one-directional cut, one or the other. But if you went forth and back, right? So you went in both directions. I feel a kosher, even if the knife is just a small little razor. I feel a small little razor. It's okay, ksheira, because if you went back and forth, the length of the knife is irrelevant. Because he can accommodate a proper cut if he's going back and forth, despite the shortness of the knife. How do we know? You can't press down when you do shechita. It has to be a back and forth motion. Once again, that pasuk in Yirmiyah, chetz shachal l'shenem mirma. So the chetz that shoots through is like the act of shechita. It has to be a straight motion across, as opposed to pressing down. Tana der Bishmoel, we have a different source for this. The pasuk says v'shachat. V'shachat has been abakar. Ein v'shachat ela umashach. The word v'shachat, the term, is translated as something which is moving across. Umashach, he's pulling the knife towards him. It's an across motion as opposed to a downward motion. As we find in the next pasuk as well, Zav Shachat. So how do we know? Shachat means umashach. We have a raya from the pasuk in Malachim. Zov shachat. This is when they would turn gold into golden threads. Zov shachat. Okay, and how do we do that? Rashi says they soften the gold and they pull it into threads. They thin it into threads by pulling it. So we see that shachat means to pull. Furthermore, we have a pasuk chetz shachat l'shenim mirmadiber. So again, back to that first pasuk, where the chetz is cutting across, as opposed to pressing down. Why do we need the second pasuk for the same point? Perhaps you can argue that the gold pasuk isn't really going to define it for us. Zav shachud, the reason why it's called shachud, shenitva kechut. Shachud is like chut. It's spun, it's thin to be like a thread. Shenitva kechut, that's why it's called shachud, chut, but unrelated to the act of shchita. Tashma comes the next pasuk, chetz shachud, l'shenim diber, mirmo diber. So there, the comparison between the shooting arrow and the shechita is pretty visible, because the arrow comes across, cuts straight across, comparable to the shechita, which likewise involves a similar motion. Listen to the story. Rabba would examine the arrow, the tip of the arrow, to ensure that it's smooth, sharp, without blemishes, fit for shechita, on behalf of Rabbi Yehuda B'Tachlifa, and he would shecht in a very unusual manner. He was a very talented sheikh. He would shecht the bird mid-flight. V'shachet ba'oifa, he would shecht the bird ba'adid deparach, while it was flying overhead. Says the Gemara, v'dilma avid chalada. Okay, it's a proper knife. He was able to aim for the simanim. Great. But maybe there was chalada involved. Maybe the arrow sort of got embedded in the bird and then reached the simanim in a concealed way. How do we know it went directly to the neck area? Chazina, we take a look at the bird afterwards, and we see. Right, so the question was, maybe the arrow sort of snuck between the simanim and cut them like that. How do you know it came outright from the side to make a clean cut without running into chalada issues? Chazina gid fidim mefarmi, because we check the feathers around the neck and we see them punctured in the right way. We see them cut from the outside in. So clearly which indicate the route that the arrow took straight from the outside clean into the simanim without coming sort of through the back door. Ask the Gemara, Vaboy Kisoi. We turn to the next Amid, Vaboy Kisoi. Fine, so shechita was properly done. What about Kisi Adam? Birds need Kisi Adam. The blood has to be covered in soil. You can't do that when it's flying, mid-flight, and the blood, gets dispersed, all over the place. So, how do you accomplish that? V'chitema, perhaps you'll say the machasule. Perhaps you could. You can find drippings of blood and cover it with earth. Says the Gemara of Amar Zera. Amarav, it's not enough just to cover. Fine, so you'll take a sack of offer, you run around, you find all the droppings of blood, and you cover. Rabbi Zera teaches the name of Rav, so when you shecht a bird, you have to sandwich the blood. It should be offer on bottom, upon which the blood is placed, and then the offer on top. Shenemar, as it says, v'chisahu ba'afar. You cover the blood with offer. Now, offer le'nemar doesn't say chiso offer. You cover it with offer, which would indicate that coverage on top is enough. Ela be'offer. Be'offer says it has to be in offer, on both sides, sandwiched into offer. We learn he has to make sure there's offer on bottom and on top. So fine, he's going to run around, find the blood and cover it. But what about the bottom requirement? The answer is the mazmli la'offer the kulipitka. Kulipitka is the entire valley, meaning that he would prepare the offer throughout the entire valley. Rashi says he would take a shovel and soften up the earth all around. So you have the bottom layer there. Wherever it lands, it's going to land on soft material. And then he'll come around with his bag of soil after the shechita, and the blood has already dripped. He'll go and he'll cover it to accomplish the mitzvah of kisiyata. Interesting phenomenon. Okay, so we have the Mishnah, which introduces the halacha of derasa. So typically the shechita involves a back and forth motion, but even forth or back would work, provided the knife is long enough to accommodate a proper cut. But we must ensure that it's not going to be derasa, it's not going to be squeezing, pressing down, which would disqualify the shechita. What is the makar that shechita has to be in a cross motion as opposed to a downward motion? We have the pasuk chetz shachud, we have zav shachud. Hence we know that the v'shachat is a proper cross motion as opposed to a downward cut. All the best to you and atzlacha.